Welcome to Own Your Essence, the podcast where healing meets empowerment. We're your host
Lee Walzak.
and April DeMille, two psychic mediums and a life coach specializing in grief, trauma, and toxic relationship recovery. This is a space for deep conversations, powerful transformations, and real, raw healing.
Each week, we'll explore topics ranging from the metaphysical to emotional grief, addiction, mental health, spiritual wellness, and self discovery. Through interviews and personal insights, we aim to spread awareness, foster connection, and support you. You're in the right place if you're ready to set boundaries, reclaim your confidence, and step into your true power. Let's own your essence together.
Podcast disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as medical, psychological, or legal advice. If you need medical or mental health support, please contact a qualified healthcare provider. This podcast also contains explicit language and discussions on sensitive topics, including but not limited to abuse, trauma, addiction, and mental health struggles. Listener discretion is advised, as some content may be triggering or not suitable for younger audiences. By continuing to listen, you acknowledge and accept these terms. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Own Your Essence podcast, where we get to have deep transformational conversations with some of our favorite people. And today, we are your favorite people. We are your hosts
Lee Walzak.
and April DeMille. So, what I mean by that is typically we would have this hour filled with a guest speaker. And today we decided to do something different. We're just going to hang out with you guys. It's just going to be me and Lee. We're going to kind of shoot the shit, talk about some things that are important to us, and let you guys get to know us a little bit more as your host for the Own Your Essence podcast. So that's kind of the direction we're headed today. So, yeah, let's hit it.
Yeah.
Let's take it away.
We're excited.
Yeah. No, it's kind of it's a nice change of pace. It's the energy feels a little lighthearted. Some of the things that, well, not some of the things, a lot of the things we talk about are very um heavy kinds of transformation and conversations. So sometimes we need a break and we're like, can we get some laughs? Because holy fuck.
So today we'll hopefully bring some laughter and
Yeah.
some lightheartedness.
I will say though, before we hopped on, I was like, wait a second. Do I want to get on here and fuck some shit up? Am I feeling fiery or do I actually want to laugh? So I'm trying to still figure out where that sits with me. Maybe it'll be both.
Maybe it'll be a middle point. We'll see.
Maybe so. What's going on in your hood, Lee?
In my hood, I mean, oh God, that is a loaded question.
Yeah, I bet it is actually.
I mean, it depends on what area we're looking at. Everything is going well, I would say. I mean, everything ebbs and flows. So I think, like most people probably out there are listening, there's an ebb and flow that happens where some days you're really in the flow of things and some days you're not. Um, I know that before we sat down to do this, we were toying with the idea of talking about boundaries and like spiritual practice, and if you have a spiritual practice or just boundaries in general when it comes to things of this nature. And I know that has been a big one for me lately. I think it's a constant learning process for me. So that is kind of in the forefront of my awareness. How about you?
I mean, I can totally relate to the boundaries. It is definitely it's always a priority for sure. And self-inventory, all the things, they're definitely part of uh, thriving. I will say I had a moment last night where I had to remind myself it was okay to be human. And
Yeah.
it was because I I had a really late night session with a very talented lady. And it was late last night. It was like 9 o'clock. And I got to spend 30 minutes with this lady over the phone. And she gets on the phone and she goes, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm great." And then I stopped myself, like almost before I finished the sentence, and was like, "You know what? That's a fucking lie. I'm not great at all, actually." And I
Mm.
had to really remind myself, look how I was just going to be so like, "Oh, everything's good." No, no, things aren't good right now. I'm so when you talk about the ebb and the flow, I'm definitely in that place where I'm like, this fucking sucks. So it's things have been pretty heavy lately. And so I had to catch myself and I had to be honest with this lady and I was like, you know what? Things aren't great. That's a lie. I'm really struggling, but thank you for asking at least. And also thank you for giving me the moment to correct myself and allow my humanness.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's like an authenticity too in being honest. I think we've kind of, almost been conditioned in a sense, and I don't mean that in a super negative way or anything like that or a judgmental way. I think it's just how it is. But we've kind of been conditioned in a way to respond like that. Oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Whether you're good or not, it just for the sake of that small little albeit dishonest kind of conversation. If you're not good, it's dishonest, right? And I think we've all kind of done that to an extent. So I like that idea too, though, of reminding yourself that it's okay to be human.
Yeah.
And I
And
think there's,
go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. I was going to say, I think there's a lot of, um, there's a lot of respect that I hold for, someone who can just be honest in the moment with it. And, again, no judgment to anyone that can't hold that space or is just so used to saying like good or whatever it is, like I'm good. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of respect for the honesty as well. Like I'm not
Yeah.
actually great right now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And speaking of the fact that right, like we're covering up something that, it's dishonest when we're like, oh yeah, we're fine. Another part of that is when the person asking is like, hey, how you doing? But they really don't want to actually hear your answer. Like, do they actually care how you're doing? So it's also being discerning about who you're opening up to. And like
sure.
when people are having those conversations, do you actually want to know how I'm doing, or is this just the polite thing to do? You know?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I've definitely had the experience where some people don't know how to receive that.
Mhm.
There's almost an expectation that you're going to come back and say, "Oh, I'm good."
Right.
And again, I think it's what we're used to. Uh, I don't think we're typically like shown anything too different from that. So I think there is an expectation of like, oh, they're going to come back. So it kind of, takes people aback sometimes, which again is not something that I judge or anything like that. But I've definitely witnessed and had the experience of people not knowing exactly what to do with that, um, where maybe they try to just shift the subject really quickly or whatever it is. But I think at the end of the day, if I feel the need to be honest with myself and with that person in that moment, that's what matters for me, not so much, their response back, because that I can't control.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And also it's still part of the learning process because if you decide to use that moment to be witnessed, right? To be heard, to be seen, and they aren't able to give you that, yeah, you're right. That's not your responsibility. But also, now I know not to try to be received by you for future reference, you know?
Right. Well, yeah, now there's an understanding of like, neither good nor bad, but it's just I understand that you don't have capacity to hold that, and that's okay. But I'll be discerning about that in the future. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like next time, don't ask me how I'm doing. Fucking liar. If you guys can't tell, I'm a lot more like direct and blunt than I think
April,
Lee can be sometimes, but I'm okay with it. No shame, no shame on myself. Like I'm all for it.
April's fiery. If you haven't got that.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten the picture by now,
I definitely think I tend to sit more in the neutrality and less in the fiery part. But you have the fieriness, which is, it's good.
yeah, sometimes I do. I mean, it does happen. But I'm pretty good. I usually have a pretty good balance though, so I'm okay with it.
Speaking of fieriness, though, and on kind of the topic of boundaries, I just connected this, which is funny because I hadn't before we sat down, but I actually have a nickname for you. Can
What?
I? well,
Oh
you know,
yeah, yeah, I know
yeah.
what it is. Yes,
Can
by
I
all
share
means.
that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go for
Okay.
it.
I call you the boundary boss,
Yep.
or the boundary queen, either one. I
Yeah.
think I've used both, but
Hmm.
boundary boss, boundary queen. Because I will say this about April, that she is super aware and super well, or very well practiced, we'll say, at holding boundaries for herself, in a way that is, um, appropriate and kind, of course, to herself and to others,
In a
but
way
really
that I teach it to others.
right, like really good, yeah, at holding that space. So, I would actually be curious if you like want to speak on that at all, because you're very solid in it.
I will say that I'm still human and I still have my moments. I'm actually going through an experience as we speak that I haven't decided if I'm allowing something to irritate me and getting resentful or if I'm trying to be more open because there's a fine line, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going through an experience like that right now. So again, like I'm always learning and growing too. But uh it is true that I've come through a lot of experiences that have brought me, full circle where I am right now. And even my children, I have best friends and people around my community, family members, even my kids that will be like, how do I respond to this? And they will send messages and I will send responses and help others learn how to have confidence in standing up for themselves in the most appropriate and compassionate way. I'm not a fiery dick all the time, I swear. It just sounds like it, but like I really am actually quite a compassionate person. And Lee, you already know that. Like I have the
Yeah.
biggest heart ever. And but I do see that there's a need for people to learn how to speak for themselves and how to hold space for themselves and just stand firm in their lines too. And and that has led me to even be inspired of maybe this needs to be a book. Maybe I need to put real life examples of things that have been, you know, um, situations and conversations that I've had and put it in a book and maybe that can help people. So yeah, I guess that's all I've got to offer on that for now. But yeah,
I mean, what you said though, there was a piece of that that it really kind of struck me, because it's something that I've experienced, and I think so many people have experienced. But you said, I don't know if I'm just allowing something to happen and then building resentment towards it.
right. Yeah.
Um, and I think that's such a common thing, where we'll continue to maybe say yes to something that we know that we should be saying no to, or
Right.
sometimes it's not as clear like you're talking about, but I think a lot of time it is pretty clear, and we, kind of take it upon ourselves to, I'll say it like that, because it is kind of dishonor ourselves in a certain way, where it's like, well, no, I'll just continue to do this, or whatever, even though it doesn't really vibe with me, I'm not really aligned with it.
Yeah.
And then inevitably we do build up resentments,
Right.
and then that resentment can potentially come out in our interactions, or we
Uh-huh.
can project that out onto other people, and I think that's where communication gets lost sometimes. But I know that I used to be the poster person for doing that, where there were just so many times where I knew that something was not in resonance with me. And I kept saying yes to it anyway. And lo and behold, and again, no judgment, because I was doing the best I could with what I had. It was what I knew at the time. But lo and behold, I would end up with all this resentment, and it would come out in different ways, and it would cause other problems,
Mhm.
right? So I think there is something to be said about that, though.
Well, and so I'm kind of like, do I just tell my story to give some context, or do I kind of, I'm kind of torn on what to do about that right now. But I'm feeling more led to just kind of sharing a little bit about that story. So I have a roommate and love the girl to death. She and I do really well together, or at least have been up until this point. And we still get along for the sake of conversation. Like we get along, we do well together still. We're friends. But in the last few months, there have been some decisions made that I did not agree with. and that I found a lot of discomfort, and it triggered me. It threatened me, and there's lots of factors that play into that, and I'm responsible for those triggers. But because I'm responsible for those triggers, I'm also responsible for my safety and the safety of my kids when they're here and things like that, right? So, so there was a particular situation where a certain person continued to come around so much to the point that they were suffocating even me, right? And a conversation had to be had about that. And I was like, look, I'm not okay with this. There's been too much of this. I feel like when your personal life is suffocating my life too, there's not a good balance here, and I'm not okay with this. And so I did speak my truth, and I did say, I'm not okay with this. These are not things that I'm willing to tolerate. And those were things that she was super mindful of. She was super receptive of that. Um, and I didn't really think it would have to come up again. However, there were some transitions that happened over like last 2 months, and it has come up again. And I noticed that I felt resentful every time this person came around. And it's really sad because the person is a great person. I'm not actually mad at that person. I'm mad because I'm feeling unheard and I'm feeling resentful
Yeah.
because somewhere I feel like she's still not honoring what I've asked of her.
Right.
And so it's really, am I mad at this person? Is it this person I don't like? Or is it really I'm pissed off because somewhere I've still allowed or tolerated this disrespect? And this person, he's just a reminder of that decision, or that my words escape me right now. Give me 1 second.
Hmm.
Um, so God, why am I struggling with this so bad right now? I'm really struggling. Hold, please.
It happens.
Um, so it's like, like again, like I'm noticing that he is more like a mirror of the resentment I feel around her crappy decisions. And her crappy decisions are really my fault because where am I still not making myself clear? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good awareness to have too, because I think so often in the context of, you even questioning, like, is it just this person who I feel like is not in resonance with me, or is it because I'm feeling unheard that this
Right,
person now becomes a mirror for me?
right.
Um, and I think that's a really good awareness to have because I think so often we're operating from this kind of unconscious place of not really looking at it, not really sitting with it, maybe not even understanding some of what we're feeling. And we would, like in an example like this, be looking at that person being like, I just don't like that person. You know what I
Right,
mean? But
right. And
when
it's really
in
about what they represent.
right. So I think even to start like having that awareness is such like a huge thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And then again, there's also the part where I go, I do have to question because of my triggers and some things that have, stirred my PTSD in the past. Am I just being over protective, and not open to this guy for other reasons? And that's a possibility too. And so it's trying to find the balance between the two, like where can I give or where do I feel like I'm being taken advantage of? And because, of the previous situations over the month, this feels more like, nah, this is more resentment and me feeling taken advantage of at this point. That's definitely what this is.
sure. Yeah. Um, And I think that's also a common piece, what you just said about, we have our own, everyone comes with them. I don't think, anyone escapes this human journey without a certain amount of wounding or triggers around different things. And I know that I've noticed for myself that, when I feel irritated or something of that nature, about something else in someone, it's mirroring back to me something that is a trigger of mine,
Yeah, it's like a key component for you to look at.
right. So now I wasn't always like this. It definitely didn't happen overnight. But now if I find myself, in conversation with someone or whatever it is, like any interaction, any exposure to somebody where I'm like, ooh, I feel kind of like, unsettled by that, or,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
um, annoyed, or whatever it might be, which are all valid feelings. I think we can feel all the things and then decide how we move with those things. But um, I always then look at like, okay, what within myself though maybe is unmet here? What is this kind of mirroring and paralleling within me that is maybe some sort of a wound that I might be conscious of, I might not be.
Right.
Um, and always there is something.
Yeah. Well, and so in answer to your question earlier about the boundary queen or the boundary boss,
Yeah,
I hold a dual title. Um, I would say that these are the reasons why, because I do have the ability to, or the awareness, as you would put it, to look at these positions from all the angles and show up for myself in a way that I feel is needed. But and at the end of that story, with there's still a lot of factors that I've left out, but we've pretty much decided that we can't roommate together anymore, and that's okay. Still love the lady to pieces. But this will be our last year as roommates.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm curious, like, because I can always when we do these sorts of podcasts, I can feel a certain energy of like people watching, even if they're not watching now because we haven't released it, but they're, you know what I mean? Like there's a certain energy that you kind of, um, or at least that I kind of can perceive about it. And I keep hearing this sense of like, but it's challenging to have these conversations and it's hard. And like, how do I go about doing that?
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that that's and I think you and I have even talked about these conversations before, and I know I've had um like my kids will come to me and be like, "Oh, I'm so scared. How do I say this?" And there's always a way to bring up conversations that are necessary. And I think the biggest key factor is making sure that you have given yourself space
right.
to regulate your body and not come from a place of reaction, right? If
Exactly.
you're reacting, it's not going to be received. If you're responding, you're in a different energy.
100%. Yeah. I think everything about what you just said, first of all. And then I think also, kind of like you said earlier, reminding ourselves that we're still human and to give ourselves some grace. Because I think even honestly, from the time that we're young, we are taught in certain ways to kind of dishonor what we're feeling,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it can be anything. It can be simple little things where, your parent or something is like, oh, give Uncle Johnny a hug. And, your little child self is like, oh, I don't know if I want to give Uncle Johnny a hug. You know what I mean?
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
just, and that's not to shame anyone or again to judge anyone. I think that we're all just kind of doing the best we can with what we have. And some people, it hasn't really even crossed their mind. But I do think we live in a marinade, if you will, where we are taught in so many different ways to kind of dishonor ourselves. So just to remember that, like you've been carrying with that, excuse me, you've been carrying that with you for however long now, and it's not going to be like a switch that you just flip where it's
right.
like, oh, okay, I'm totally okay with, having these conversations now. Like I think it's okay to really kind of wobble and to be unsure about how to do it as long as you're
Honestly, it should scare
doing it.
you. To be honest,
Right.
it should scare you at first. It should terrify you. Because anytime I feel like you're stretching out of your comfort zones, it usually does scare you.
Typically, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to put that out there and be like, oh, you should always be afraid of growing, because that's not how I mean that.
Right.
But sometimes when we are flexing our muscles and stretching or growing, it can be territory that we don't, it just looks so uncertain. And so that can be, your voice is shaking, your body's freaking out, like all the things, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think to what you said, I think it's a very normal experience to have feelings of being anxious or apprehensive or scared about um, doing something like that, especially if you're new to it. Maybe you're one of the lucky people that don't really experience that, but I think most of us probably do. And I think, like you said, it's a testament to us kind of expanding beyond our comfort zone, which can be scary, and you can do it anyway, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it comes in steps, like you said. It's, it might be one small little thing, so that way you don't overwhelm your system.
Right, right. I know that I noticed too, I don't know about you, but it's come up for me in my personal life with people that I work with, in speaking to, I guess, like why other people seem to have challenges with this. Again, I can personally relate to this. But I also notice in like hypersensitive people or like empathic people or however you want to put that, whatever word you feel comfortable with there, um, there is this sense of kind of like, well, I can't say no because I should be there for other people and I need to be there to help other people and kind of bend over backwards for other people and take on all their stuff. So the idea of a boundary kind of inhibits that. Um, and I know for me, there was like a large, or I'm sorry, a long learning process. I think I tried to combine those two words together. A long learning process of really kind of dismantling that way of thinking and kind of unraveling that. Because I know for me, like I was that person who,
Oh yeah, me too.
yeah, like gave everything, you know, to everyone else without, really allowing myself to receive back and kind of bending over backwards and saying yes to everything. It
Mhm.
showed up very significantly in my mediumship when I first started doing mediumship. And I always tell the story of like how I would, at one point I was working like two retail jobs, which retail is very interesting because you are in a lot of people's energy field in a very specific way all day long. And not everyone is happy to meet you in that place. Um, so you're doing that, and I was doing, two of those jobs at the time, and then, with the mediumship, people, would come to me just through word of mouth and be like, oh, I'd really love to like, do this with you, and there was a piece of me that was screaming like, no, I don't have anything left, but then I would make the decision to go sit in people's living rooms channeling their departed loved ones for like 4 hours, after working, however many shifts or whatever it was. And I was so depleted. Um, and I think it took just instance after instance after instance of me being completely depleted and exhausted to finally kind of come up against this idea and acknowledge this idea of like, I can't say yes to everything. I have to honor myself first.
All right. And I'm glad you bring that up because like codependence, people pleasing, whatever label you want to slap on it, um, neediness, lack of worth, whatever you want to give it, right? Like whatever name you want to call it. The fact of the matter is it comes from a place of dishonesty as well.
Mhm.
So we're not being honest about who we are. We're not being honest about our needs. We're not being honest about anything in our lives. And we're just constantly overgiving to where there's nothing left. But we're even being dishonest about that. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
fine. This is fine.
Right.
I'm going to keep saying yes. I'm going to keep doing the things like when we are depleted and all the things. So yeah, it's not a place to be.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it is dishonest, and I know that
Mhm.
not everyone might be comfortable hearing that, and that's okay. But there is a dishonesty about it. Every time that I said yes to something like that,
Mhm.
where I was like, "Oh my God, I'm already so tired," and
Mhm.
but let me just go do this anyway.
Right. And
That
you're
was
betraying yourself. And that's the
right.
part where the honesty comes in. You're not being honest about what you're able to give and all those things in that moment. So,
Well, I think too, and this is where having grace for yourself comes into, because I think for me personally, and I'm sure other people can probably relate, but this was so coded in my upbringing, like you need to give all of yourself all the time to everyone else, and there shouldn't be any room left for you because that's selfish, and I think we kind
yeah.
of hold on to those ideas that we learn. And really, I think we have it so backwards. And I say that from a loving place, but I think it is so backwards because what I finally have realized, at least on my journey, is that if I'm not taking the time that I need for myself and I'm depleted and I'm exhausted, I'm bringing that energy with me everywhere that I go.
Oh, for
And then
sure.
And then I'm
It's like
sitting down.
heavy baggage.
Right. Like, and it affects other people's feelings. And not only that, but like if I'm providing a service for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I'm exhausted, how fair is that, to them? You know what I mean? Like how that I'm allowing myself to get to a point where I'm so depleted and so exhausted, and then I'm just going to say yes because I feel like I should.
Right.
And now that's the energy that I'm bringing into this space, right? Like that's not fair.
Yeah, like when you have sitters, what are they really going to get from you if you're only functioning at like 25%?
Right. And I will say, of course, there are days that we are going to be operating at a higher percentage than other days. I'm not really
That's,
speaking to that
well, yeah,
piece.
that's different. That's a little
Right.
different than, the topic of conversation.
Right. So, it's not that part of it. It's, if I'm allowing myself to become depleted and perpetually, doing this and become exhausted. And then again, I'm bringing that energy into the space with me. And it doesn't even have to be in terms of like a sitter or whatever it is. It can be, I go around, a group of friends of mine or whatever, and our fields interact, whether people know it or not. So if I'm in that space, I am then impacting everyone else in a certain way.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just going to speak on that for a minute too, because I personally am not going to sit with a psychic medium or a coach that wants to help me move through some really big hardships. I'm not going to sit with anyone if they don't have the integrity of doing the work themselves. I'm going to tell them to fuck off.
Right.
Thanks, but no thanks. I'll pass. Like if you can't show up and do the heavy lifting too, then how am I going to trust you to guide me?
Right. Right. Because again, there's, a dishonesty that you can sense about that.
Yeah.
And it might just be where that person's at, and that's okay. But I do agree that, if I'm sitting with someone, I do look for that, does
Yeah.
this person kind of, um, are they walking their walk sort of thing, or walking their talk, whatever that phrase is, but you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, for sure. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because speaking on, boundaries and people feeling like we owe them something and we should be giving because we're selfish if we're not and all the things. I want to talk about like how that shows up for you in business, like what that looks like for you right now, maybe what it used to look like, but what it looks like now and how you handle things like that.
Oh, that's a good question. I think right now, and I think mostly how it shows up for me, is I will get people, well-meaning people, but I will get people sometimes that, how do I want to put this? Are kind of looking for me to heal them in some way, me like looking at me as the sole agent in their healing journey. Um, and kind of almost expecting that, or um, relying on me in a certain way to bring them peace or to bring them comfort. Now, of course, as doing what I do, I can, just by the nature of doing what I do, help bring a sense of peace to somebody, or a sense of comfort to somebody. Um, but I'm talking more towards, kind of solely relying on just me to facilitate that for them. So first of all, before I go on, does that make sense though, how I put that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that you and I are both in the business of, and I think I can say this on both of our behalves, but I think that you and I both, when we work with people, we prefer people to feel empowered and learn how to trust on them in themselves.
Oh,
And
100%.
so I think that's one of the things that attracted me to you,
Mhm.
um, and your level of integrity and why we get along so well, both as networking buddies, community, but also as like best buddies. Like, um, so is because like we don't want people to rely on us for anything. We
Right.
want you to learn how to rely on yourself.
Right.
And sometimes that means there's a process and we get we get the honor of being able to witness that with you and like go through those motions with you until you get there, but we don't want to be your your crutch. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
not what we're trying to do.
Well, it can be such a gray area to, or maybe not gray. It can be such a hard area to navigate sometimes for, people like us, or at least in my personal experience. Because I think there are so many layers to that. But I think it goes back to, I am a healer. I am not your healer. You are your healer.
For
You know
sure.
what I mean? Like you have everything that you already need inside of you. And I can kind of lead you to that place and I can guide you to that and remind you of who you are,
Right.
and remind you that you have these answers. But I am not your healer. You are. And I will never try to claim that title. Um, and
Yeah,
I,
we're not the drug dealers, y'all.
right, like, yeah, so I think and it can get a little hazy too, because I know that, you asked how it kind of shows up for me. And as I'm talking, I have been aware of people who have come to me, in certain ways, who I feel like there's almost like I don't know what other word to use besides almost like a bit of an addiction to, so I can't think of another word, but an addiction to kind of like, you know, going to see the medium and hearing the messages all the time. And I get
And
where,
is it like leaning on that for peace? Like relying on
yes,
it for peace? Yeah.
yeah, like relying on it because,
And
uh,
without that, it would be devastating or
right,
the repercussions would be this or this or this, right? Like without
right.
that. Yeah.
And that's been difficult for me to navigate too, because sometimes I do have to kind of um, I have to call it in a certain way, where if I feel like it's happening too much, or I feel like someone, excuse me, is just not really taking the messages and then integrating that information and then using it to help themselves, and then they're just leaning on me as a crutch, like you said. And that to me means that I'm not really doing my job, or that person isn't in a place to receive what I have to offer in that way.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that for people, and I know
Right.
that I can't control anyone else's journey and all of that, but I guess in my work what I do want is, like you said, to empower people and to um, you know again, lead them back to who they are, and remind them that they're their own best healer. So if someone is continuously coming back to me and I feel like doing it in a way of leaning on me to, again, facilitate this connection or this information, I don't see that as healthy, for either one of us, to be honest. And it's not a judgment. I get where it comes from. I get people are trying to figure out how to shift and mold and navigate their pain and all the things. But I just don't think it's healthy, and it's not why I do what I do. So there have been times where I've had to say, I don't think I can work with this person anymore, because I don't actually feel like they're receiving what I have to say and integrating it into their lives to use for their own healing.
Well,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's the beauty of being able to discern even how you attract your own clientele, right?
Right.
Like you get to decide if someone's a good fit for you or not, just like your sitter gets to decide if you're a good fit for them or not. And I love that there's that piece of I have control of my environment because I get to lean on that.
Right. And I will say it does come so much down to discernment, because I have other people, other clients, repeat clients, that I think are wonderful. And not that I don't think the other people are wonderful, but that I just have known for a while. They've been in my awareness for a while. That I have read, done readings for, done sessions for, helped work on things, whatever it might be that they're looking for, but so many different times. And I know through my own discernment that they're still not using me as a crutch. Like I might have sat with them and read for them and had sessions with them time and time again, but I know that there is an integration of what they are learning through
Right.
me and on their own, and they're actually using that in a way that helps uplift and empower them. So it really does come down to discernment, where it's it's the subtle kind of energy of like, do I feel like this person is again kind of just relying on me and using me as a crutch and maybe using me to kind of give them a bit of like a dopamine hit in some way, because I think that can also be a thing. Or are they actually taking this and receiving it in a way that is helpful for them?
Yeah, and I think part of that discernment is figuring out like, okay, I have this client and I feel like here's a place where I needed to offer, it was like a teaching moment, right? And
Mm,
so I used my words to redirect this client to show them what I feel is allowed in our communication and out of our expectations. Are they accepting this as redirection or are they just not receiving anything I say at all? Those are
right,
different things.
right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I like the way you put that. Are they accepting this as redirection or,
right,
otherwise? So,
right.
um, but I think, it can be a bit of a sticky territory and I will be honest, I have found it challenging and still do sometimes, to have to kind of sit with some of that and have to even sit with the idea of like, maybe I'm just not the best fit for this person at this point anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but again, it kind of comes back to being honest with ourselves and honest about the situation. And if I feel that that's the case, then I have to honor that.
Yeah, for sure. And, I kind of want to add to this because I've had people, um, people that have known me for a long time or knew me from high school. They want to chat or be buddy buddy, whatever it is, whether it's people from my past, clients, um, or even potential clients, people just trying to like try whatever it is. Some people just feel entitled to your energy. They feel
Mm,
entitled to a response, to your time, to whatever that is, right? And I've had people blow up my messengers. I've had people be really shitty and shame me and say dumb fucking shit because like I'm not at their every beck and call and because I have boundaries. People don't like it when you can't be manipulated.
right,
People don't always respond well to boundaries because then this isn't the version of you I know. They might be committed to a version of me that was fucking 15 years old for all I know. And back then I was very easily manipulated, right? And now I can't be. So they don't like that, right? So I've had to make it very clear in my own world, um, what I allow and what I tolerate. And I've had to unfriend a lot of people. I've had to change my playgrounds a million times. All the things. But one of my most favorite fucking tools in the world on my phone is that motherfucking mute button, right? There's a mute button, and then on Facebook now you can turn off the read receipts so that way you don't even have to worry about, you know, your chat being read or whatever, or appearing to be read, whatever. So you can turn off the typing indicator. There's all these things that Facebook has updated now. And I love it because it's just another layer of tools that we can use to preserve our peace. And um, whether it's popular opinion or not, my job is number one to protect my peace. And I don't care how cocky or shitty that looks to anyone. Like, I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that I'm functioning at best capacity to be in a place where I can be of service to those that are working with me, to be my best self for my best self, but also to be there for my kids and my family and the things I choose to do. That's what brings me joy. And I'm not going to let people and their shitty attitudes take away from that.
right, right. And I think that's a good point that, and we kind of live in an era right now where the landscape of technology and everything has changed so drastically. And so now, we do have things like that, or we did for a while, because, on Facebook and other apps, that wasn't an option for a while.
It
You would
wasn't,
know,
yeah.
when someone read your message or whatever. So
And then they
I
would
think,
feel like they demanded or they felt entitled to response, and then they'd get shitty to you if you didn't respond. So cool, let's just take that equation out of there.
right. Well, I think, with the kind of changing landscape, there's also this kind of um, this idea that's been um, kind of doled out. I don't know how else to put that, but this idea that's kind of, been put out that we should be on call for everybody 24/7. And and that's just, first of all, it's impossible, right? Like we can't be on call for everybody 24/7. It's not humanly possible. So so I think kind of reminding ourselves that, like, if I need to, and this has been a big one for me as well. Like I was that person that was like, oh, I got a message, I have to respond to it right away, because otherwise they're going to think that I'm ignoring them. They're going to think, that I don't care, whatever it
Hmm.
is. And I have had to go through a process of reminding myself, like, it is okay for me to pause for a second, or
Yeah.
just sit with whatever they had to say, or maybe I just glance at it and then I have the intention of coming back to it later. You know what I mean? Um, or to find the right time to reply. Not everything warrants a response right in that moment. And there is such a magic and a grace I've found to actually allowing that pause, allowing ourselves to sit with whatever, and then maybe even in that sense, coming from a place of responsiveness instead of reactivity, depending on what you're
Yeah.
dealing with, right?
Yeah.
um, so there's so much freedom in it, but also, it's been a learning process, because again, I was definitely that person.
Yeah.
um,
Well, and
where
I mean, I'm OCD, like super OCD. So for me, I can't stand having my notifications. Like I can't stand it. So if I see the notifications, it drives me crazy. I'll open it just to clear the fucking notification and I won't read it. I don't give a fuck what it says. I'm just going to open it to get rid of the notification.
Mm.
So, and the moment you do, well, then people are like, oh, she saw it. So she read it. Oh, so she must be ignoring me. Well, you don't get to decide when you have access to me. That's not how this works.
well,
Right.
that and the other person is creating a story at that
Right.
point,
And
which
I'm
I
not
think.
responsible for their story, but
Right.
I am also fully aware that I'm not going to engage in that story. Like I'm not going to whatever you have to tell yourself, I really don't care. It's not my business. Don't give a fuck. Right. But I do know that you don't get to just demand access to me whenever you want. That's not how this works at all.
Right. And I think some people do expect that. I think some people might not exactly have that intention, but that's kind of how it comes across. I think it's dependent on the situation. But to what you said too, or what we were speaking about the stories, I think we so often do that as humans.
Hmm.
Like we can just get one little piece of information that says, this person read your message, and then we start going into, well, they didn't reply, and then we make up this whole big thing about, how they're ignoring us, or how, like, our friendship doesn't mean anything to them. And you
Yeah.
know and
Spin out.
it honestly just could be that this person is taking a pause, like.
Yeah. Well, and actually, you bring a good point up because at the very beginning of the year, I did a live video on Facebook where I talked about how moving forward, I would no longer take phone calls. Do you remember that? When I
I
said,
do, yeah.
yeah, I would no longer take phone calls. I don't have the space for it. It's not something in my wheelhouse that I even want to, worry about right now. And so, um, which by the way has been one of the best decisions ever. But the fact of the matter is I've put it out there and people still are like, why aren't you talking to me? I'm
Mm.
still going to blow up your messages and send you fucking 50 of them, even though you never respond to any of them. Like it's still a thing. But I will tell you, like that mute button has been my best friend. I love it. My favorite
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I can see where it would be
And
helpful.
also, like, even though I love these people that are messaging me and still not necessarily honoring the fact that I said I don't want to have communication, um, the fact of the matter is if you're not hearing from me, it's on purpose.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, I think too, we we can communicate, how, where we're at with something, or what space we're holding for ourselves with something, and what we're expecting.
Mhm.
But beyond that conversation, if someone, continues to, um, sort of negate that in any way,
Hmm.
then, at that point, it's like, we're faced with the question, do I want to continue to engage
Right,
and mesh with this person? Do I want to continue
right.
to have the same conversation? And typically, I won't speak for every situation, but typically in my experience, that answer is no.
That
I don't,
answer is, yeah, that's the answer. Like if somebody's not able to hold respect for my wishes, well, then we're not a good match. We're not a good fit, and that's okay.
right. I mean, and I just think, and I think the communication piece is just so important, wherever we're at, even if it is uncomfortable, kind of shifting or going back to what we were saying earlier, even if it is super uncomfortable, at the end of the day, if I can communicate something to someone and I'm like, hey, like I've even had this come up for me where it doesn't seem like this huge significant thing, but it was enough that I felt like I had to say something where it's like, well, I don't really I don't resonate with when you send me messages that are like this. I don't like consuming that content. So
Yes,
I
yes,
would be glad to talk to you about other things, but that's not how I'm choosing to engage with you or with anybody, right? And
right.
I think even if it seems like something that is, because I think we can kind of get into our own heads and create a narrative of like, well, it's not that big of a deal and it's not that significant and it's not that important. But it is significant if you're holding it in a way where you're feeling like I need to communicate this, right? And I
Hmm.
think the best thing that we can ever do is communicate that. And then if someone's not receiving that, then we can kind of go from there and figure out like, all right, well, how do I want to, further move with this person? Do I want to just kind of, not engage my energy? But I think the communication piece is just so important. And I will say this, it's so freeing once you do it, like
It
you
is. It
it
really is. I agree with that. Like, even going back to my like roommate situation, once we had a couple conversations, I was like, okay, those conversations offered a insight that I was not completely aware of
Hmm.
that I'm so thankful for because now I know that moving forward, we will have to go our separate ways. Still sending her all the love in the world, love her to pieces, think she's a lot of fun, think she's great, but we can't live together anymore, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think communication, like you said earlier, from that regulated, nervous system standpoint, right? Because like there can also be, which we touched on, but a lot of triggers that come up, even when we're dealing with the idea of, I want to communicate this to somebody. Like I know for me personally, I have had, and I'm still working through, but a lot of triggers around feeling unheard by people. So
Mm-hmm.
people that are close to me. So I think at the beginning, like going into conversations for me, where I was like, there was an intention of wanting to be heard, but I think my nervous system and my brain already kind of was prepping me to feel unheard because I was so used to that. So I had to really kind of acknowledge that piece and really sit with that piece of like, okay, am I saying this in a way that is truly just a neutral kind of, I'm communicating this information to you for this intended purpose of letting you know this thing? Or am I saying this in a way where I'm already bracing for you not to hear me? Because there's a totally different energy and tone to those two things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, coming from a place where we can be aware of those things for ourselves and be regulated is super important. But yeah, like you were saying, like with the conversation with your roommate and everything, once we actually get to that point and we do it, it can be really freeing and give us a lot of, like you said, new information about new insights that we weren't aware of.
Yeah, not even just insights from that person, but even insights from ourselves. And what I mean by that is I had a conversation, God, when was this? It was like 2022, I think. And I had this one person that was constantly blowing up my messenger. Um, and love this lady to pieces, but she would send me messages that were like fucking 20-minute audios just going off about whatever was going on in her life.
Mm.
And I remember feeling so overwhelmed anytime I saw that she sent me a message. I was like depleted before I even opened it. And I was like, and at the time I did have my plate full. So honestly, I was in no position um to take on being able to hold space for her.
Hmm.
But I had not made that clear to her yet. And so I just kept feeling like drained, depleted, defeated, all the things every time I saw she messaged me. It was just a fucking nightmare. I'd see her name pop up and I'd fucking roll my eyes and do all the things, right? So then I realized um, one of the message I had opened and I had listened to, and I tried to respond while I was running out the door. And the
Hmm.
response came out very like, how do I want to say it? It came out very like um, short. I'm going to say short and detached, right? Just kind of like whatever, right? It's kind of just like I'm just appeasing you and responding just to give you a response, but I actually don't care because I'm not in the moment and I'm too overwhelmed to be a part of this conversation.
Hmm.
And I sat with that because I think she had said something to me about the effect. I think, like, maybe it hurt her feelings or maybe she felt unheard, or it was something like that, right?
Sure.
And I, I had to sit with that. And I was like, I'm going to give you an apology right now because you're right. In that moment, I didn't show up for you. And the truth is I couldn't have even if I wanted to. And let me tell you why, right? So I did owe her an apology because the conversation should have happened months or weeks or prior to what had taken place. But I was like, in retrospect to everything that's been going on, I should have let you know months ago that this has just this is where I'm at. I have nothing to give you, and I can't make you happy with these superficial, like little short statements either. I literally just have nothing to give you, and I should have let you know that months ago, as opposed to you sitting here expecting that you would get some sort of conversation out of me or whatever it was that you're looking for. I can't give it to you. And it's unfortunate that I let it go this long before I finally said something, but I'm saying something to you now. Like, yes, I apologize that I wasn't able to give you that space. Um, but I also apologize to myself because I knew I couldn't give you that space and I kept entertaining the thought that maybe I could, or or maybe I felt like it was an obligation that I needed to fulfill, whatever the reason was. I didn't have it to give. And that's where we're at now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think there is so first of all, I think that's a good awareness on your part. Like, I realized this, from different angles, like how, I should have probably got on this months ago, when I first kind of felt it or, whatever, and just had the conversation of like, I can't give that. Um, and I think that's another thing that people, myself in the past included, have struggled a lot with, or can struggle a lot with, is this idea of like letting somebody know that you just don't have the space to hold for them in that moment. Because I will say, even for me, like I had an upbringing, and I still have people that I love dearly in my life, but that still kind of maintain this sort of idea that it doesn't matter if you're depleted. Like if I want your attention and I need emotional support from you, or whatever it is, then you give that to me now, you
Right.
know
Yeah.
um and that was very normalized in my upbringing. Like I didn't know any different. So I think people can struggle with this idea of like, I know I don't have it to give, but like I don't know how to kind of approach that conversation, or maybe I feel like, again, that's selfish, or whatever it is. But even to your story, I think there's such a freedom in being able to a freedom and like a safety in a relationship, being able to address that with somebody, and also have them be receptive to that, right? Like, I don't have the space to hold for you right now in this regard, and I'm sorry that I don't have it, but here's where I'm at with things.
Mhm.
um you know I hope that you're able to navigate it the best that you can,
Mhm.
but to have someone actually like to say that, first of all, I think is so freeing, and so and maybe especially for me personally, because I never knew anything else growing up. uh and I think to have someone actually be receptive to that, and them, say, okay, I get it. Like, that's okay. I feel like that's such a marker of like safety in a relationship.
Well, and that safety piece is the important part, and I'll expand on that. You talked about a little bit briefly about how, where does the confidence in your boundaries come from? Like how does that even happen? Because it can be so scary. And I'll tell you, the confidence came when I knew that the moment I spoke my truth, if the other person I'm speaking to was receptive of my truth,
Mhm.
then that's great. And if they weren't, that was great too. I knew that there was no such thing as a real loss.
Right.
Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
like, if you're not really losing any connections, right? And everything is a gain and everything's about alignment, then this person's either going to respect my boundary or they're not. And I don't really give a fuck which way it goes. Either way, I win.
Right. Well, yeah, because either way, you have now information.
Right.
You
Either way, I win. Either way, it's removing someone from my presence that isn't a good fit for me, or it's reminding me of how awesome this presence is and how much I appreciate them in my life. Either way, I win. And that's
Yeah.
why the confidence in my boundaries came.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And into what you said too, if someone, like you said, is receptive, great. That gives you the information that, like, okay, then I can start building a trust with this person to be receptive to what I have to say.
Right.
Or if it goes the opposite way and they're, not receptive to it, well, do I really want that person in my space then? Probably not,
Probably
because
not. Right.
not that they're bad or good or wrong or, any of the things, but it just means that the information is telling me that they're not aligned with where I'm at and they're not receptive to what I'm saying.
Right. And that's absolutely doing yourself a favor.
Yeah.
And them too, honestly.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, if you're not aligned with them, it's not exactly fair to carry on and pretend that you are, you
Yeah,
know?
for either one of you, when you can create more space for somebody that's better aligned with your beliefs, your virtues, your just more receptive to you, period.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a layered conversation. Boundaries.
for sure. Lots of polarities and layers, y'all.
It's
Yeah.
it's hard for people, I get it. And yeah, I guess just kind of paraphrasing, like, from what we said before, I get people, have all had different experiences, especially in our upbringing with things like this. Like I always say that, I didn't know what a boundary was growing up. Like that wasn't a word,
Yeah, like
that
that's
people
not
use.
what?
I actually remember the first time, and this is a bit of an insight to my more personal life, my more private life, but I remember well, I think everything I say actually comes from that place, but this is a bit more detailed. But I remember the first time a therapist that I was working with that I loved to pieces. Like she was so good, and really just I think helped change my life in a lot of ways. But one of the first times that she actually brought up boundaries and told me that I could have boundaries, and I remember this moment of being like, "What? Like I
You're
can."
like, you're like, wait, this idea is so foreign to me. I can do this?
Yeah, it was literally that moment of like, I can do that. Like I can tell somebody
Yeah,
that and
like
like
that's a
that's
thing.
okay. Yeah. So like she kind of had to explain to me, like this is what a boundary is and this is what it means and it's totally okay if you do that. And I remember being a little shell shocked,
Hmm.
so my point being though that I speak about this from a place of understanding if someone is in that space of not knowing how to do it or trying to figure it out or feeling really uncomfortable. Like, I was at a point where I didn't even know that I could. I had no idea what it was. What is a boundary? So it's normal and we all get there when we're supposed to arrive.
I would agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Like, there's no such time as the wrong time or poor time or late or any of that stuff. It happens when it's going to happen. And so that's probably a pretty profound statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I don't know. I think that's what I got for
Oh,
today, though.
yeah. I mean, I think we covered some territory. I think that's about all I've got too. And now my daughter's actually blowing up my phone. Speaking about phones blowing up, she's like, Mom, And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of podcasting right now, but but yeah, I think that's all I've got too. I think it was a pretty good conversation. Is there anything else you want to add before we hop off of here?
I don't think so. I think I feel settled.
Yeah, me too. So, um, as always, it's always fun shooting the shit with my buddy.
Yeah.
But yeah, always good times, good talks. So, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it here, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Own Your Essence. We're so grateful to our guests for sharing their wisdom and to you, our listeners, for being part of this journey towards healing and empowerment. If today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share this space with others who might need it. If you have any questions, topic ideas, want to be a guest, or would like to work with myself or April privately, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next episode.